Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Wiley, and I am introducing our informal debate on tele-ABA versus in-home therapy. In our group, we have Melissa Boylan, who lives in Madison, Alabama, and works as an administrative assistant for a child development center. Melissa also conducts in-home behavioral therapy and volunteers as a coach for a special needs soccer program. We also have in our group Angela Bryson, who lives in Sacramento, California, and has also worked in an ABA in-clinic and in-home center for 2 years. We also have Michaela Huff, who lives in Central Illinois. She currently works as an RBT for an in-clinic and in-home company. Additionally, we have Kiana Johnson, who lives in Greenville, South Carolina, and is also an RBT with 4 years experience in a clinical setting. As mentioned previously, my name is Ashley Wiley, and I live in Indianapolis, Indiana, and I am also a certified RBT. I work for a nonprofit ABA in-clinic center conducting behavioral therapy with children duly diagnosed or diagnosed with ASD. As far as our debate goes today, Michaela Huff will be serving as our summarizer and researcher for the pro side of in-home therapy, as well as the con side of tele-ABA. Angela Bryson will be serving as our summarizer and researcher for the pro side of tele-ABA, as well as the con side of in-home therapy. Melissa Boylan will serve as our illustrator and concluder, and Kiana Johnson will serve as our fielder. I, Ashley Wiley, will be serving as the introducer as well as assisting in fielding for today's debate. We want to begin by highlighting the goals of this debate by discussing first what applied behavioral analysis, otherwise known as ABA, is, who provides the therapy, and what does ABA therapy look like, as well as what population it serves. Behavioral analysis is the scientific study of behavior. It focuses on the causes of behavior as well as how behaviors are maintained. Applied behavioral analysis, or ABA, is the application of principles of learning and motivation from behavioral analysis. In other words, ABA is the process of systematically applying interventions based on the principles of learning theory to improve socially significant behaviors to a meaningful degree, as well as to demonstrate that the interventions employed are what is responsible for the improvement in the behavior. I will now transition to Melissa for a visual illustration of the percentage of children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, also known as ASD. Melissa?
Thanks, Ashley. According to the graphs from TACA, as of 2010, 1 in every 68 children is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. This has increased from 1 in 500 since 1999. An increase in prevalence also leads to increased costs. Currently, the annual cost to society is about $268 billion with a projected cost of $1 trillion by 2025. Therefore, there is a need to gain more funding for autism research. Currently, ASD research only receives about $78 million annually, whereas other diseases such as pediatric AIDS and muscular dystrophy receive much more funding with having lower prevalence rates. With more funding, we can learn more about ASD and hopefully decrease the cost to society.
Thank you, Melissa, for that illustration. Now that we have a little background on what applied behavioral analysis is, as well as what population it serves, let's look at how ABA differs in certain areas. I wish to pose 3 questions. What is tele-ABA services? What is in-home therapy? And finally, why are the ethics codes that behavioral analysts are held to so important? The purpose of answering these 3 questions is to understand what ABA can look like, as well as lay the foundation for today's debate, which my group members will expand on later. For our first question, what is tele-ABA services? Tele-ABA services are those services that consist of an applied behavioral analyst working at a remote location, providing the same kind of evaluations and therapy they would in an office, clinic, school, or home setting, but through live video conferencing. Through tele-ABA, services can be delivered from any 2 locations with an internet connection and a secure audio-video platform. Tele-ABA serves as an alternative to in-person behavioral services and often bridges the gap in areas where there may be a lack of qualified behavioral health professionals. Even for families that live in communities where ABA services are readily available, remote therapy sessions can be a very convenient way to maximize the frequency of therapy and augment the benefits of in-person sessions. For our second question, what is in-home therapy? In-home applied behavioral analysis, ABA therapy, for children with autism and other developmental disorders consists of highly flexible and versatile programs that supplement or replace facility-based care. ABA Home Care allows applied behavioral analysts to accommodate children and families with special needs in the home to ensure access to effective therapy. Depending on the needs of the child, the parent, and the availability of the applied behavioral analyst, in-home ABA services can replace or complement center-based interventions. Many applied behavior analysts find that providing in-home therapy to children with autism facilitates learning and decreases undesirable behaviors because the ABA services are delivered in an atmosphere that the child finds safe, familiar, and non-threatening. This allows applied behavioral analysts to better manage the child's behavior, so ABA therapies and techniques can be more effectively implemented. I will now transition to Melissa for a visual illustration of Board Certified Behavior Analyst BACB certificates. Melissa?
Thank you. In Deschamps and Fuqua's 2014 study, it showed that there were about 16,000 BACB certificates in the United States. BACB certificates in these graphs includes BCBAD, BCBA, and BCABA. Of the total, about 12,000 are BCBA certificates, 2,000 have doctorate level certifications, and 2,000 are BCABA certificates. The graph on the right shows the number of certificates for each state per 1,000 state populations. Large states with higher populations have more BCBAs. Although there seems to be a shortage of certificates, there are some instances where states with lower populations have more BCBAs per capita, as well as larger states having fewer per capita. As the study discussed, this suggests that factors other than a state's population might be having an impact on the number of BACB certificates.
Thank you, Melissa, for that illustration. Now let's look at our third and final question I would like to pose for our debate today. Why are the ethics codes that behavior analysts are held to so important? Ethics have functioned as the governing doctrine for the field of ABA since the founding of the Behavior Analyst Certification Board, the BACB, in 1998. Since the founding of the BACB, professional and ethical conduct and the regulation of such has been of the highest priority. Therefore, the BACB specifically created the professional and ethical compliance codes for behavior analysts. These outline the professional and ethical requirements that all BACB applicants, as well as others in the field, are held to. These include 10 sections aimed to ensure the confidentiality, obtaining consent for treatment, ensuring treatment is effective and is conducted in the least restrictive manner, and ensuring clients' rights are respected and protected. Considering ethics have always been of the utmost priority, they are often revised over the years to reflect current issues and address new problems to ensure that all behavioral analysts are using best practices. I will now transition to Kiana to discuss the topic of professionalism within the field of ABA. Kiana?
Yes, we as behavior analysts should use the best practices in the field of ABA based on the ethics code of the BCBA guidelines for the best interest of the child, as was just mentioned. There is also professional aspect to these ethical codes that we as behavior analysts have to abide by. There are two counterpoints that I want to make about the professionalism of these codes. A, behavior analysts should teach and maintain professionalism with ethical behavior. And B, behavior analysts should evaluate and put into action the best practice of ethical behavior. To best explain these counterpoints, researchers Broadhead and Higby, 2012, further discussed these 2 points in their article, Teaching and Maintaining Ethical Behavior in a Professional Organization. Broadhead and Higby, 2012, mentions how behavior analytic professional organizations may adopt systems that teach and maintain ethical behavior in their employees. Also, how systems of ethical supervision and management may allow for an organization to authorize training that parents ethical misconduct by employees. Without the appropriate teaching of ethical conduct, the effects of it could affect employees' behavior with what is and is not ethical. For this reason, Broadhead and Higby, 2012, suggested that a system of monitoring and supervising may improve the care and protection of the employees, along with the benefits and practices. Some benefits that were mentioned are to give the organization a chance to improve their quality of the treatment services they give to their clients, lead greater protection for their consumers or employees, and how BCBAs can make sure employees in the field of ABA are trained correctly and have the knowledge of the professional ethical compliance code. The best practices mentioned by Broadhead and Higby 2012 is for behavior analysts and ABA organizations to give their employees periodic tests by providing approximately 10 scenarios that have problems that could occur in the organization and how to professionally solve these problems. Furthermore, behavior analysts should monitor the complaints they receive from their employees. And lastly, having a supervisor review over the BCBA's ethical code of professionalism every 2 weeks with their employees.
Thank you, Kiana, for discussing some key points on professionalism within the field. We will now transition to Michaela to discuss the cons of tele-ABA therapy. Michaela?
Thanks, Ashley. There are many cons to tele-ABA therapy. In the Professional and Ethical Compliance Code for Behavior Analysts, Code 2.09 addresses treatment and intervention efficacy. This code states that clients have a right to effective treatment. While parents will be trained, the training may only last a short time. Behaviors and interventions are constantly changing, which will require a retraining to carry out a session. Tele-ABA does not allow for any hands-on approaches to training or hands-on approaches to showing how to conduct a certain intervention or procedure. Tele-ABA would not always be able to provide sufficient training regarding examples and non-examples. This is regarding problem behaviors, interventions, task analysis, and others. While someone would be able to train a parent or guardian, that person is still not as knowledgeable or aware as trained behavior analysts. Code 4.05 describes behavior change program objectives with the client. Like mentioned previously, clients require continuous testing and updating of programs, which may cause this aspect to suffer. Behavior change programs will not have an immediate effect due to the tele aspect of the sessions. This would be in violation of this code. Tele-ABA occurs all online over the internet. Communicating through the computer is more likely to be in direct violation of PHI or Protected Health Information, as well as HIPAA, or Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. While I'm sure all clinics would ensure they are using HIPAA-protected databases, that does not ensure who is present in the background on both ends are HIPAA compliant. It would need to be certain that computers have protectants up for hackers. This means anytime someone gets a new computer or uses a new Wi-Fi, they have to recheck for these. Violating any of these would be in violation of Code 2.06 or maintaining confidentiality. While it could be in violation of this code if any of this occurs, what happens if they do not have access to a computer? In order for tele-ABA to occur, it is essential for both parties to have a computer with both a webcam and a microphone, as well as sufficient internet access. Code 2.15 discusses interrupting or discontinuing services. The first part of this code discusses that behavior analysts act in the best interests of the client and supervisee to avoid interruption or disruption of service. Internet access could cause an interruption in services due to the speed, weather, power outage, or other variables. There could also be an interruption due to not being able to hear or see each other if there are lags in the service. Environmental conditions that interfere with implementation, or Code 4.07, could also be in violation regarding tele-ABA services. This could occur for a variety of reasons, but a few examples are when there is broken equipment or if there are problem behaviors that occur. Problem behaviors such as elopement and property destruction are hard or near impossible to address with tele-ABA due to not being in person. If these occur, a behavior analyst may not be able to see the full scope of what is happening on the other end, which may also be hard to address in the future. Problem behaviors like these typically require someone for assistance, but this cannot occur when it is over the computer. If behavior analysts are unable to address these issues, they would be in violation of Code 4.07. Individualized behavior change programs, or Code 4.03, states that they require constant changes, probing, and prompting to occur. Much like discussed earlier, this is hard to implement through tele-ABA due to the variables present. All in all, tele-ABA does not allow for sufficient training, confidentiality, and program implementation that is needed for our clientele.
Thank you, Michaela, for discussing the cons of tele-ABA therapy. We will now transition to Melissa for a visual illustration of computer and internet access in the United States, as well as the cost of materials. Melissa?
Thanks. As discussed previously, Tele ABA requires the client to have a computer and internet. According to the graphs, in 2013, only 78.5% of 3 to 17-year-olds had access to a computer at home. Only 57.1% had access to the internet while at home. Also, many of those that do not have a computer may not be able to afford one. Of families with an average income of up to $35,000 annually, only 68% of children have access to a computer, while 90% of children whose families earn more than $75,000 annually have access to a computer. Therefore, those who do not have access to computers or internet would most likely rely on an in-home therapy over tele-ABA. Another benefit, as discussed, is decreased cost of materials. It is not necessarily required to buy a computer or pay for internet with in-home therapy because the therapist is coming directly to the home. The cost of these materials is not cheap, especially for lower-income families, as discussed earlier. The average cost of a computer in the United States is about $544. Although the cost has decreased over the years, some may not be able to afford the extra expense, especially considering they will also need internet. The average cost of high-speed internet is currently around $70 a month, which comes to a total of $840 a year. Even if the client opted for the lowest speed internet available, it would be about $35 a month. That's a total of $420 a year. Also, if going with the lower internet speeds, online programs may be slow and cause interruptions in sessions. This interruption of services and added cost of materials is not feasible to some families.
Thank you, Melissa, for those illustrations. We will now transition to Kiana to address a key question. Kiana?
What can funding sources do to better help with the cost of materials needed in therapy? Tamika Meadows is a BCBA and a blogger on iloveaba.com. In this blog, she specifically discusses and breaks down the estimate cost of ABA therapy based on the staff being at $2,400, consultants at $4,000, supplies at $400, and materials at $600. With all four aspects, it averages out to be roughly $7,400. Meadows further discussed the funding of insurance based on the states of the map of the United States. If you look at the map, each state is color-coded. States that are green means that enacted laws require insurance companies to pay for ABA therapy. The red and yellow states work towards laws, but are only at a bill level regarding legislation. And the even if family green, they may still be unable to get insurance to cover their child's therapy. In this case, it would be called a self-funded insurance plan. This plan is where the company the behavior analysts work for pools their own money together to pay claims rather than contracting with an insurance company. So to answer the leading question, what can funding sources do to better help with the cost of materials needed in therapy? If companies would stop pulling their own money together to pay for the cost of materials, supplies, consultants, etc., as Meadows mentioned, then maybe funding sources these items.
Thank you, Kiana, for addressing this question. We will now turn things back over to Michaela to discuss the pros of in-home therapy. Michaela?
Thanks, Ashley. On the other hand, there are many pros to in-home ABA therapy. In the Professional and Ethical Compliance Code for Behavior Analysts, Code 4.09 states that behavior analysts review and appraise the restrictiveness of procedures and always recommend the least restrictive procedures likely to be effective. In-home therapy provides clients with his or her most familiar and natural environment. Alongside this, in-home therapy also increases generalization and addresses behaviors as they occur, where they are most likely to occur. They also help to abide to caring procedures in the least restrictive environments. Early intervention services occur for children up to age 3. Since these children are all early learners, the natural environment of in-home helps them to learn in their most familiar surroundings. Code 4.03 states that clients need individualized behavior change programs to their unique behaviors, environmental variables, assessment results, and goals of each client. Since problem behaviors and interventions needed are constantly changing, it is imperative that the therapy is occurring in-home and in person in order to quickly change probing or prompting needed for a successful intervention. Behavior analysts may need to probe 2 or 3 different procedures, prompts, visuals in order to find what is successful for the client. Being in person allows for these to occur quickly and without training the parent. If there are environmental variables occurring, being in home allows for these variables to be noted and hopefully allow therapists to sanitize environments in the future. In-home therapy allows a trained behavior analyst to implement the interventions and procedures, increasing treatment fidelity. In-home also allows for continuous monitoring of behaviors and interventions being implemented, which also increases treatment fidelity. I personally do in-home ABA therapy with multiple clients. Programs that we run occur in multiple environments, including the kitchen, bedroom, or bathroom. These different rooms allow for programs such as feeding therapy, brushing teeth, and skill acquisition tasks to be carried out. In-home allows for continuous monitor of all interventions. It is unrealistic to think that tele-ABA will be able to encompass a view of all of these interventions, while as in-home it is definitely realistic. Lastly, in-home therapy allows for functional behavior assessments and functional analysis to be conducted. In-home allows behavior analysts to take in many considerations and be aware of all variables while being in person with all situations, which allows for a more positive and individualized experience for clients.
Thank you, Michaela, for discussing the pros of in-home therapy. We will now transition to Kiana to discuss the role professionalism plays. All parties involved in individuals with autism or disabilities and other paraprofessionals, supervisors, doctors, etc., are all on the same page across all settings. Parents are involved in their child's in-home therapy so that they will be able to learn how to operate appropriately with their child's programs, daily living skills, etc.
For parents who help them.
We will now transition to Angela to discuss the pros of tele-ABA therapy. Angela?
According to Weinman et al., early intervention has been a proven method and ABA a recommended practice for children diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. The growing number of diagnoses each year has caused an increase in demand and a shortage of qualified professionals to provide meaningful services to families and individuals diagnosed with autism. Tele-ABA, previously defined by Ashley as utilizing video conferences and distance communication, can be used to connect a population to medically necessary services and support. It prevents further decline in development and communication and increases independence in both family and the child. One benefit to tele-ABA is the cost. Traveling to clinics or schools can be cost prohibitive to rural areas or those with limited income, and tele-ABA reduces patient and provider costs to insurances and companies utilizing tele-ABA. They can then expand services to areas without raising their costs. Research conducted by Lindgren et al. In 2016 compared tele-ABA with in-home and the effects of training parents. The study found tele-ABA greatly reduced costs of services when training parents.
Melissa will expand further on the findings of this study. Melissa?
Thank you, Ashley and Angela. Lindgren et al. Found that the cost of tele-ABA required less costs for families, staff, and facilities. Based on the graph, the average weekly cost for a family using in-home ABA is a little less than $280, whereas tele-ABA in a clinic setting costs about $210 a week, and in-home tele-ABA costs the families about $150 per week. Tele-ABA would cost a family about half as much per week compared to traditional in-home ABA. Therefore, as stated by Lindgren et al., the aim of telehealth, specifically tele-ABA, is enhancing care experiences, improving population health, and reducing costs of care.
Thank you, Melissa. We will now return to Angela to continue discussing the benefits of telehealth and give examples of the ethics supported. Angela?
The ethics codes supported by Tele ABA's lower costs are the Boundaries of Competence 1.02, as it connects families with competent and qualified board-certified behavior analysts and decreases the need and use of unqualified proximal professionals to work above their competence. It also covers Accepting Clients 2.01, where families won't be refused or unable to access treatment due to cost of travel, as clinics and schools outside families' area can implement Tele ABA. There is also Treatment or Intervention Efficacy 2.09. Geographical or economic situations will no longer affect access to quality treatment. Tele ABA therapy can bridge these gaps, fulfilling rights of clients to effective procedures and services. Another pro of Tele ABA is its effectiveness. The Lindgren study also showed no significant differences in overall improvement based on Tele ABA or in-home. What the study concluded was distance made no difference on parents' use of functional assessments and functional communication training procedures. Treatment acceptability was high and discontinuation of services was infrequent. The fidelity of ABA procedures was properly demonstrated by parents without analysts present, and in regard to problem behavior, the study found a greater reduction with Tele ABA at 97% compared to in-home at 95%. This difference could be explained by when parents began implementing intervention. With Tele ABA, parents began implementing changes from the beginning. According to Vismar et al., Tele ABA can be more effective as it fits better within routines and lifestyles, promoting active and meaningful learning. The Vismar study also found if in-home ABA therapy parents couldn't access intervention help regularly or found it too difficult, they won't use techniques on their own. Tele ABA parents have constant access to intervention help and tools. Tele ABA parents can also share a range of interactions, locations, and behaviors for feedback, increasing opportunities to target for intervention. Lastly, the study found fidelity was achieved within 6 weeks of intervention beginning and maintained across follow-up when parents were implementing Tele ABA. If we compare the training of both parents, both in-home and Tele ABA were successful in learning content, and the Vismar et al. Study supported the use of Tele ABA training will not compromise quality. Another study conducted in 2010 by Baggett et al. Supports the effectiveness of Tele ABA and found improved communication behaviors, sensitivity to children's needs, and enthusiasm for engaging in intervention. Baggett et al. Also found an increased rating of attentiveness and responsiveness in parents' interaction styles when intervention began.
Melissa will now go over figures 3, 6, 7, and 8 from the Baggett study, and then follow up with an example case study involving the differences and effectiveness of Tele ABA on improving parent and child relations. Melissa?
Thank you, Ashley. As Angela was previously discussing, Baggett et al. Examined an internet-based adaptation of an evidence-based intervention, the Play and Learning Strategies program. They found that internet-based interventions for infants focusing on social-emotional skills through interactions with their mothers were beneficial. The parent reports of high satisfaction shows that interventions delivered by remote technologies can be easy to use, interactive, and the parents are capable of feeling a sense of connection. Although not statistically significant, Baggett et al. Found that through using these remote technologies, mothers' depressive symptoms were reduced. This could possibly be due to the training serving as social support systems. Also, the infants whose mothers received this remote coaching demonstrated increased social-emotional interactions with their mothers and the surrounding environment. Now I will discuss an example of a young boy named Andrew. He is a 6-year-old boy diagnosed with ASD. He displays behaviors including self-harm and aggression towards others. Andrew's family lives in a rural town and does not have direct immediate access to ABA services. By using Tele ABA services, Andrew's mom does not have to wait for a therapist or consultant to come to the house. Andrew has immediate access to a therapist through video or phone that can help talk mom through dealing with Andrew's behaviors. This is possible through an online program such as seen to the left. This online software gives the parent or guardians direct access to services with a therapist, the child's current targets or programs, parent training, etc. This can help reduce the cost to the family by not having to commute long distances for services or have the behavior specialist commute to them.
Thank you, Melissa, for the example case study. We will now turn things back over to Angela, who will now discuss the ethics in regard to the effectiveness of Tele-ABA. Angela?
The ethics codes supporting tele-ABA efficiency are Professional and Scientific Relationships 1.05, easier to maintain professionalism as there is some distance between clients. Multiple Relationships and Conflict of Interest 1.06, there is no risk of families taking advantage of student therapists by using session as a babysitting service or creating situations where the therapist becomes helpers around the home or replace parent engaging with child. Also, maintaining confidentiality and maintaining records 2.06 and 2.07 respectively. A study conducted by Pollard, Karimi, and Fagelli in 2017 looked into the differences between in-home and tele-ABA and found with less people involved in intervention, it lowers the chance of confidentiality being breached. To support the study, most companies and individual ABA therapy practitioners use computers to keep records and are therefore required to follow and get approval of HIPAA and CARF certification. Using Access Online allows parents can access reports, contracts, and consultation notes. There is also no confusion what either party said, as conversations and reports can be recorded and saved. Another ethics code is documenting professional work and research and records and data, 2.10 and 2.11 respectively. Pollard, Karimi, and Fagelli explain this ethics code provides framework for documentation and review of data compliant with laws of the state and insurance company policies, which can be followed correctly by both tele-ABA and in-home therapy.
Thank you, Angela, for your discussion on the pros of tele-ABA therapy. We will now transition to Kiana to pose a few questions regarding the pros of tele-ABA. Kiana?
Why should behavior analysts provide behavior analytic services only in the context of a defined professional or scientific relationship or role? Behavior analysts should only provide behavior analytic services only in the context of a defined professional scientific relationship or role because as behavior analyst and professional, the relationship between them and the client as well as the client's family should be based on the client's therapy, such as their treatment plan or behavior intervention plan. If the relationship suddenly becomes more of a personal and friendly relationship, there is a greater risk of losing the professional and scientific relationship between both parties. This could be seen as a multiple relationship in which, based on the Professional Ethical Compliance Code of the BACB guidelines, is a violation in the field of ABA. This leads into the next question regarding the pros of tele-ABA. How can behavior analysts avoid multiple relationships? If a client or the client's parent were to ask their behavior analyst to babysit, add them on social media such as Facebook, or talk about topics that are not related to their child's therapy, such as a concert they went to or personal issues in their lives, then the behavior analyst should inform the client and the client's parents of the ethical code 1.06, multiple relationships and conflict of interest.
Thank you, Kiana, for posing those questions. We will now turn things back over to Angela to discuss the cons of in-home ABA therapy. Angela?
The first con of in-home therapy is the cost. Melissa covered the Lindring study showing cost-saving practices of tele-ABA. It also shed light on the fact that providers often have waiting lists for clinics or schools and for limited student therapists. Tele-ABA can be offered almost immediately and with no waiting list for assigned staff. Time is another factor. Romani and Schultz found insurance negates the hours the supervising consultant can work in-home, and this is often combined with the cost of a student therapist. They are the ones who approve the number of hours allowed. Consultants can be in-home sporadically, and tele-ABA allows for more reliable access to intervention tools and the supervising consultant. Another factor is traveling between clients takes time and cutting down on the time allowed to work on hands with the client. In-home ABA is also affected by traffic, car issues, weather, and other activities. Tele ABA requires no traveling and is less affected by these factors. Sessions and conferences can be moved around to accommodate these activities. Consultants can sometimes also have personal obligations or illnesses. With Tele ABA, this allows consultants to work from home, and being contagious will no longer hinder therapy consultation. The ethics code possibly violated through the use of in-home therapy are Supervisory Delegation 5.03, where student technicians engage in work outside their competence level and do not have access to relevant clinical techniques or ethical standards unless provided by their company. Another one is promoting an ethical culture, 7.01. This is potentially violated as student therapists are not always under the constant supervision and can behave unethically. There is also a potential for unethical behavior as there are limited models of appropriate behaviors in home and community-based settings when working with clients.
Thank you, Angela, for your discussion on the cons of in-home ABA therapy. We will now turn to Kiana to pose a question regarding this side. Kiana?
Why is it difficult for clients to get off the waiting list for clinics or schools, as well as for in-home therapy, whereas tele-ABA does not require a waiting list? There are many reasons why it's difficult for clients to get off the waiting list for clinics, schools, and in-home therapy. One reason could be documentation, which could take longer than expected to receive. Furthermore, making sure the client's funding sources available, as well as having a team of therapists, behavior analysts, or supervisors for the client in order for the client to start ABA therapy.
Thank you, Kiana, for posing that question. We will now begin to wrap up. As we begin to wrap up, I would like to turn this over to Melissa for today's conclusion on our debate. Melissa?
Thanks. In conclusion, at the moment, in-home ABA and tele-ABA are both beneficial to the ASD community. Tele-ABA has a goal of changing modern healthcare to reduce costs, expanding access of services to more of the population, and providing beneficial services that enhance care. Also, due to the current shortage seen in BCBAs across the country, tele-ABA can be a solution. In-home also has benefits in helping families. In-home ABA is more hands-on, and a strong client relationship can be built. Also, in-person observations and implementation help aid in the adaptation of services. By seeing behaviors firsthand, there is no need to receive the information from someone else before adapting the environment or programs. Both appear to be overall ethically sound, but also have possible areas of concerns if not followed correctly. Some families may prefer one over the other based on cost, ease of access, or many other aspects.
Thank you, Melissa. To end today's debate on tele-ABA versus in-home ABA therapy, we will transition to Kiana for some Q&As. Kiana?
The first question is, how does your topic approach the core ethical principles? Tele-ABA versus in-home therapy approaches the core ethical principles by doing no harm and respecting the autonomy of developing and building independence. Another approach would be the benefits of others, in particular in the field of ABA, this would be the client and what is in his or her best interest. The therapist is directly intervening in the client's therapy by providing services, and the behavior analyst designs ABA treatment that is effective and sound based on the needs of the client. Next, what guidelines and codes of conduct relate to this topic? The guidelines and codes of conduct that relate to our topic are 1.02, the boundaries of competence, 1.05, professional and scientific relationships, 1.06, multiple relationships and conflict of interest, 2.01, accepting clients, 2.06, maintaining confidentiality, 2.07, maintaining our records, 2.09, treatment and prevention efficacy, 2.10, documents and professional work and research, 2.11, records and data, 4.03, individualized behavior change program, 4.05, describing behavior change program objectives, 4.07, environmental conditions that interfere with implementation, 4.09, least restrictive environment, 5.03, supervisory delegation, and 7.01, promoting ethical culture. What research, publication, or current trends support each side of the discussion? Research that support both Tele-ABA and in-home therapy are Sanders, 1981, The Child's Natural Environment, Hastings, 2003, Generalization, Wyman, 2009, Early Intervention, Mendel, 2013, Treatment Fidelity, Broadhead and Higby, 2012, Training and Maintaining Ethical Behavior, Ibanez et al., 2018, Enhancing Interactions During Daily Routines, a randomized controlled trial of web-based tutorial for parents of young children with ASD, Weingart, 2004, Telehealth, Gross et al., 2010, Polar et al., 2017, and Lindgren et al., 2016, talked about the cost of ABA therapy. Why is this important to the field of ABA and the intervention? Tele-ABA and in-home therapy is important to the field of ABA and the interventions because with in-home therapy, the behavior analyst can ensure access to effective therapy. Services can complement center-based interventions and decrease in behavior due to the child's environment he or she finds to be most safe and familiar. Like in-home therapies with Tele-ABA, behavior analysts can ensure access to effective therapy for their clients. Even though behaviors increase more in Tele-ABA than in-home therapy, behavior analysts can implement a BIP, known as a behavior intervention plan, to decrease the behavior. And lastly, how does this consideration of this topic enhance practice and or address current issues? Tele-ABA and in-home therapy can enhance practice and address current issues by ensuring that behavior analysts are continuing to abide by the professional and ethical compliance code of the BCBA guidelines. Also to ensure that therapists, such as RBTs and lines, are periodically tested and trained on these ethical codes, language such as vocabulary terms, and implementing programs appropriately and intensively to get the most effective therapy and success for their clients.
Thank you, Kiana, for addressing those questions as they directly relate to today's debate. On behalf of our group members, we would like to thank the listeners for their attendance and attention to today's debate on Tele-ABA versus in-home therapy. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.